Thank you so much. A very good morning, everyone. Okay, so today we're going to speak about the AI energy finance trifecta. So, the future of AI will not be written in code alone, it will be written in power plants, in power grids, and in capital markets. Today's session will actually take you through the journey, how they will actually work together to shape the future. Next slide, please. Next slide. Give me a second. This is not moving. Sorry, just give us a second. Okay, let it be. I'll manage without that. That's okay. A previous slide, please. Perfect. So the fundamental truth is no AI without energy. AI is driving unprecedented consumption loads. A conventional data center consumes around 10 to 25 megawatts, but an AI hyperscale data center consumption can actually power up to 100,000 households. It also requires massive planning, infrastructure updates out, and the typical utility planning doesn't happen anymore. You have to think ahead how much of the electricity will be there, and I'll focus on how localized it is in the coming slides, and you'll see the difference. Having said that, AI can also have a transformational impact on energy. There are studies which have been done which say that if you can unlock the efficiencies that AI can deliver for energy and in other sectors, your emissions can actually be neutralized what comes from data centers by 2035. This is an estimation done by IEA. So what you can see, which I was showing from the previous slide, is that the AI is transformational for energy and it cannot be done without energy. So there's a very deep relationship between the two. Coming to the data center consumption, what you'll see out here is the data center electricity consumption is set to double by 2030. Just to give an idea, this is around how much Japan's electricity consumption is today. So you can think about how huge that impact is going to be till 2030. Then consumption is highly concentrated in 3 regions as of today: US, China, and Europe. Even though the infrastructure is concentrated, but the growth is global. So that presents an amazing opportunity for all the emerging markets, which represent a massive untapped potential for future capacity. Countries with reliable, affordable power will be best placed to unlock the data center growth. These data centers can also be anchors for new emissions power projects going forward. Please go to the next slide. So how can AI be the solution? AI, if you really look at this, if you give the right data, and we'll discuss data in a bit, but if the grid data is there, the AI can actually help in balancing grids that are becoming more complex, decentralized, and digitized. It can improve forecasting and integration of renewable energy, which will reduce curtailments and emissions. It can also help in fault detection by pinpointing the issue where it lies, the intensity of the issues, and a study shows the impact can actually reduce the outage duration by 30 to 50% if AI is used for that. And obviously, it can help us optimize our infrastructure. How much infrastructure has to be added? Is it being used efficiently? Are we making the best use of our resources? That all AI can deliver. Next slide, please. Having said that, even though it offers a transformational impact on the power sector, it is not being utilized to its fullest right now, and we have a long way to go. So what are these barriers which come in our way? The first, data access. Access to data, because companies may not necessarily share data. It may be because of competitive reasons, it may be because of confidential reasons. Secondly, we all know the problem that we have with quality of data. You know, it may not be complete. There might be you might even say accurate, and the coverage. So data, also the quality is there. But the extent of digitization also varies from country to country, region to region, and sector to sector. So as you can see, there are a number of problems. And one of the main things which will be is the skills and trainings. So the person who's using AI in energy will have to be equipped to analyze data, run models, but also understand the energy infrastructure. These are specialized skill sets which will be required more and more. And lastly, the regulatory barriers. As we go forward, we can see the regulations opening up. We're seeing it in a number of countries. But wherever data is there for a security reason or safety reason, those regulations will always remain stringent. So we may not be able to use it there. Next slide, please. Now, I was said in the first slide that I'll talk about where the location of these data centers, right? So we discussed almost 85% demands comes from US, China, and Europe. Historically, not only do they come in these countries, but even in these countries, these data centers are lumped together. They are very closely built. So historically, data centers are highly concentration in spatial terms, posing significant challenge to local grids. There are 6 states in the US where data centers actually consume 10% of the total supply, with Virginia leading at 25% of the state electricity. That all goes to data centers. So you can see the impact. Electricity grids are also under major strain right now. Estimates show that unless these risks of electricity grids is addressed, at least 20% of the data center which are under construction right now will face a delay. Another problem which is there is the lead time gap. The transmission infrastructure takes around 3 times more time to get in place than the data center. So if you build in a hurry, you might have overstock, but if you're delayed, you'll have stranded assets. So, you know, there is a very tight balance which has to be taken care of when you start building infrastructure for data center alone. Next slide, please. Okay, so again, these are all studies. Estimates show that if data centers increase at the way they are, they will contribute around 3% of the power sector emissions by 2030. Now, all technological companies and data center operators want to grow, but in a sustainable fashion. And there are a number of things that they're doing to make it happen in that way. The first, what we have right here, is about the PPAs. If you say that there are 68 gigawatts of clean energy PPAs which were signed in 2024, out of which 26% is with data centers. So as you can already see that with the growth is for clean energy. They are cognizant of the fact and they're taking that into account. Next slide, please. Okay. Another alternative that companies are considering is co-locating the data center with the generation assets. So you can see a few examples where this has been tried out. There are a number of strategic benefits for something like that. There are no interconnection delays, relief from grid congestion, energy security, but it does add to the capital cost and operational complexity, because the people who run data centers are actually not, the power generators. So there is another skill set there, but this is something which has been tried out and it has enormous benefits. Next slide, please. Okay. So we see that, and you would have read it also in the papers, when it comes to peak hours, there's stress in the system. Now, this may not last for long. It would be only 3 to 5 hours, but data centers need to take care of that. And there are a number of ways that they're trying to address it. One is on-site batteries, which give them the relevant flexibility given the short duration of stress assets. Cooling accounts for 10 to 30% of the data center's load. This, if you pair it with thermal storage, can be another answer where you shift to off-peak times. Also, workloads can be shifted. What is known as virtualization, they've started scheduling on grid conditions, prioritizing times, and also co-locating with lower congestion periods. So this is a playbook that they have for adding flexibility. Next slide, please. Okay, now coming to the third aspect, which is the financing. Global investment in data centers has nearly doubled between 2022 and 2024. Estimates put that cumulative investment between 2025 and 2030 would be $4.2 trillion. So these are huge numbers which are coming up. And the interesting fact is, if you actually look at the S&P 500 companies, of the $16 trillion increase in market cap since 2022, 12 trillion was from AI-related companies. So there's a huge investment momentum in AI happening. But having said that, when it comes to projects of data center, and we were having this discussion in the speaker lounge before this, how it is still an emerging economy sector. And the financiers consider the risk. And therefore, the financing of data center will really be pushed if those risks are mitigated, because it's still nascent in a few countries. Next slide, please. And that's my last slide. So we spoke about AI, energy, finance, and how they have to be going together in the future, and responsible scaling. So in a matter to sum this entire thing up, the intersection of AI, energy, and finance lies the defining challenge of this generation. How to power intelligence, finance its scale, and do both of these in a sustainable manner. Over to the session now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mani, for that fantastic overview. While MeitY is ensuring that we are pushing the boundaries of the India's digital sovereignty, REC is ensuring to fund the infrastructure for a longer haul of power. So now, ladies and gentlemen, it's now time for the next speaker, and maybe please welcome with a huge round of applause, Ms. Saraswati Chandrasekhar, Executive Director, REC Limited. Can we have an applause, ladies and gentlemen, please?
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and the dignitaries and the dais. It's a privilege to talk about my company, REC, over here. First of all, what is it that we are doing? Why we are here? First of all, thanks, Mani, for that excellent introduction regarding the world scenario. Now, how it is happening in India? First, we'll understand about that. Current status, India stands at 1.7 gigawatt, and in the next, up to 2030, the projection is somewhere around 8 gigawatt. And what are the key drivers? We have AI and cloud, 5G, data localization, and all those things are happening. How India is pushing the AI revolution. Infrastructure status has been given for the AI data centers. So in that case, getting a finance, it is going to be easy for them. Next is, there is a draft national policy, data center policy, which has been given. So that gives a 20-year tax holiday and permanent establishment status. There is an India AI mission, which aims to build the GPU clusters, Meghraj, our own cloud. And then state incentives, states are not leaving behind. They are also proposing so many incentives for the AI revolution. Uttar Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, Maharashtra, they have proposed so many incentives. Now, where REC comes over here? See, REC is not only, REC is in the total value chain. REC is funding the power generation, RE generation, and now we are going into the data centers also. So what is REC? I will just give a brief introduction about our company. It's a public sector enterprise, CPSU under Ministry of Power. It's a Maharatna company. We were established in 1969. Whenever the government wanted growth, REC was there. Initially, it was pump set electrification. There was a lot of requirement for the pump sets. At that time, REC was there. We started with a mission of pump set energization. Subsequently, in 1998, we registered as an NBFC, and it's a long journey. 2008, we have conferred with Navaratna status. 2010, we became an IFC, infrastructure funding company. And 2022, we have been given a Maharatna status, and we are an NBFC. We are forayed into the infrastructure sector also. So how REC, what all the various verticals? REC is financing generation, all types of generation, hydro, solar, wind, energy storage, hybrid, e-mobility, green hydrogen, and everything. REC is financing all the verticals here. And where, as I told earlier, wherever the government expected growth, REC was there. We are a preferred partner for all the government programs. See, energy is the backbone of any country. Once the energy consumption increases, the GDP of the country also improves, and thereby our growth increases. So wherever the energy has to be pushed, we are under Ministry of Power, and for all the Ministry of Power's government programs, we have been the nodal agency. For Rajiv Gandhi Gramin Vidyutikaran Yojana, Deen Dayal Gram Jyoti Yojana, RDSS scheme now, and Pradhan Mantri Sahaj Bijli Ghar Yojana Saubhagya, and now latest, last but not the least, now India Energy Stack. So REC is well into India Energy Stack. Now you see, for PM Surya Ghar Muft Bijli Yojana also, REC is the nodal agency. So that is where REC stands. So I will say REC is closely associated with energy and also growth. Now, how REC is going to help in this particular, or REC is going to participate in this particular AI? So, see, normally in India Energy Stack, REC is the knowledge partner and doing the work. And similarly, and we would like to be the preferred finance partner for the AI sector also. As she rightly said, as Ms. Mani rightly said, there are lots of challenges. But then when a panel like this sits here, they will definitely find out some good solutions for accelerating this. So now, how we are going to go about it? See, as I told you, we are funding the whole value chain. We are financing the generation projects. A lot of power requirement is there, and a lot of green power requirement is also there. So REC has already funded around 64 gigawatt of renewable energy projects, and REC has funded almost 120 gigawatt of thermal projects. So you can see the scale in which REC can fund these projects. And not only generation, now REC has always financed transmission and distribution projects also. So as Ms. Mani said, how the lines, we have to plan the lines, transmission lines, the distribution lines, come into that particular place in well in time. So REC is into all these sectors, so it becomes easy for us to coordinate and then make it possible. Now, coming to the data center. Data center is the ultimate, ultimate user. But as rightly said by Ms. Mani, it is not only an user, it is going to be an enabler. Because once using AI, we'll be able to this thing, our grid also. We'll be able to do that also. Now, coming into the financing aspect of it. You can ask, you have normally experience of generation and distribution. Generally, you are into power sector. Where is the sector expertise in infrastructure financing? See, we started in infrastructure financing in the year 2022. And we have been, for the past 3 years, we have been funding infrastructure projects. And you will be definitely happy to note that almost 10% of our loan book is in infrastructure. We have funded various sectors. We have funded metro projects, Mumbai Metro and Chennai Metro now, the latest one. We have funded airports, we have funded ports, we have funded highways, and now we are going into the digital highway, that is the AI data center. What is the benefit? Benefit is we are funding the entire value chain, as I have already told you. We have a core competency. We are financing all the power infrastructure projects wherein we know the intricacies. Ms. Mani showed a slide that 64 gigawatt, how the PPAs have been signed. 26% is towards data center. So when we do a project appraisal, we see all these aspects. So we see that the factors which are going to help execute the project in time are there or not. That we definitely see. And we are a Maharatna. So, and a loan book of 5.82 lakh crores as on 31st December. So this is not a small one. So we have deep pockets. We'll be able to finance many of the projects, many of the data centers. And as an infrastructure status has already been given, it is easy for us to do this. And now, what is it that will push the customer to us, or the customer will be happy to do with us? Customer wants a flexibility. So you want a bigger tenure, you want a flexibility. So what we have got is, we have got a different project appraisal terms and terms here. We can give a tenure of say around 15 to 20 years. That's a good timing for any finance, for a project finance. And then we can go for a structured repayment. We understand the sector. Initially, maybe there is, the contracts are yet to be lined up. So maybe the structured repayment will definitely help the lender. Another thing is ease of doing business. See, if the customer, we are always near the customer. We have 20 regional offices across the country wherein the lender is near to you. So whenever you want anything, we are just a doorstep away from you. We will be able to talk to you immediately and then do the right things for you. So this is what mainly I wanted to talk about. So I now over to the session. I think the panelists will be in a position to do more about this particular session. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Ms. Saraswati, for that insightful address. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the highlight of today's session, which is the panel discussion. And the topic for the panel discussion is the AI Energy Finance Trifecta, Future-Proofing India's Data Centers. Now, may I please request the moderator of the session, Moez Sharif, to please proceed. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the speakers for the very enlightening introductions. So it's my privilege to moderate this session and to introduce to you this very distinguished panel. So to my left, Ms. Shashi Prabha. She's the general manager at SBI and the head of their Center of Excellence on New Green Technologies. Then we have Mr. Sandeep Bandivedkar. Sorry, not in the right order, but that's okay. Who's the director of public and health sectors at Microsoft. Okay. Then, we have Mr. Ravish Gupta, who's the managing director of PVVNL, right? Distribution company in the power sector. Um, then we have Miss Vali Natarajan, Executive Director at REC. And we have Miss Vrushali God. Sorry if I mispronounce some of the names. I'm not Indian. Who's the Global Director for Climate and Operations at Google. So without further ado, since I think time is short, let's move into the questions, and I will ask our panelists if they can be really, brief and to the point and respond in like less than 2 minutes. Let's have a first round of questions, then we see if we have time for a second one or if we let people a chance to ask some questions. So first question for Google, and this is regarding the operationalization of clean energy at scale. I mean, as we have heard earlier, really it's of the essence to have sufficient energy for these data centers that require massive amounts of it, and this energy has to be green, right? And one figure I saw as I was preparing is 60 to 70% of the cost of a data center actually comes from energy. So the large hyperscale operators are now moving beyond having like annual renewable matching towards real-time and location-specific clean energy. So from your experience at Google, what operational and grid-level constraints, limit the scaling of such models in fast-growing markets like India, and what policy and regulatory interventions would be required to remove these obstacles?
Thank you. First of all, thank you for inviting me over, and thank you for everybody who's patiently listening and standing. I appreciate all your patience. We'll try to make it worthwhile as we speak. So from a Google's perspective, you saw all the stats there, and so data centers, AI, and hyperscalers are at the leading edge of some of the transition we are seeing. And I think we look at it as both a privilege and an opportunity of how we can do it in the right way. And so you mentioned a couple good things. I think one is you need clean energy at scale. So why clean energy? Because we know it's faster. We know renewables are actually faster to deliver than in countries like India. They're almost at cost parity in certain places. And it's also in a way sustainable that can operate at a longer, across a 24/7 cycle if you do it right. So clean energy at scale is an important one. The scale part of it is, I think, where the question around going away from annual matching comes in. So what one of our philosophies is can we have clean energy 24/7 that's round the clock in the areas we operate? And I'll break that up for you. Why in the areas we operate? Because we think it's we need the power, but it's also then what can we add to the grid that can help generate more power for the community that it operates in. So it's not just extracting from the grid, but actually generating and putting back. Why 24/7? Because it's a data center. You need 24/7. But the good thing of 24/7 is then you start looking at different technologies that make that 24/7 cycle. So you need solar wind and batteries, or some sort of a storage system to kind of go through. I know people like nuclear, but that's still a decade plus away. So let's talk of what we have here today. So you asked me about that. What's real and what's here. And so that's the other piece that we look at. And so when you take that construct and going to your question around what would be helpful from a policy perspective and where we are, I think in India it's a great opportunity because we've learned so much across the world, and can you all take that experience and circumvent those problems? So one of the biggest issues in the world has been, grid infrastructure. How good is the grid? How quickly can you do the interconnects? What is the clearances, and how quickly can you get all the permits done? And then how can you take and give back to the grid in a much more efficient way? I know you talked about demand response, load balancing. These are all fantastic concepts, but to get them operated at scale is something where you need a lot of public and private partnership. You need us to come to the table, but we need the policymakers and all the ministries to come and help with that. So that's a big piece of it, is how do you improve grid efficiency, grid interconnects? The second is scaling up the clean infrastructure in the first place, which is, are there new technologies, are there incentives, are there financial incentives to go and back different kind of battery storage, hydro storages, which are new, which are risky, And I know you're from another hyperscaler, and we are willing to take some of the risks, but it's a partnership into which technology and financing and getting the right return. So to me, the grid infrastructure, the right technology are the two big ones. And the third one is speed. I think we are all at a point where we are seeing a faster turnaround on these. And so how do you figure out different innovations that can speed faster?
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you for being concise and straight to the point. So now let's turn to SBI and the kind of financier perspective, and focusing on the bankability of these data centers. So from your perspective as a lender, what makes a good data center project, from that perspective? Are things like energy efficiency, renewable integration, resilience, are they influencing your credit decisions, or are they still, like secondary considerations?
Good morning, everybody, and thank you for having me on the panel. From a financer's perspective, I would say that for a bankable data center project, 3 important pillars are there. First strong pillar is the revenue visibility. Do we have the certainty of revenue? Is there a strong anchor client having preferably a hyperscaler, having a long-term agreement, and then what is the demand pipeline? Is there a firm demand pipeline in place? So once the answer to these questions is in the affirmative, we can say that the revenue visibility part of the project is sorted. Second important pillar is power. What is the availability of power? What is the reliability of power? And what is the long-term price stability of power? So what are the sources of power? Do we have an adequate procurement structure in place? What is the redundancy? Do we have a resilience mechanism in place? What is the backup arrangement? What is the tariff sensitivity? If all these while financing any data center proposal, we look at all these angles. So if these are reasonably satisfied, we would say this is bankable on this front also, on the power front also. Third and last front is regulatory and execution risk. Are they adequately mitigated? Because any project has to be, in best case scenario, we would like it to be completed in time and without cost overruns. So what is the status of land acquisition? What is the status of necessary approvals and compliances? And do we have the support from state policy? So I would say, in summing up, I would say that if there is certainty on revenue and power front, and if there is adequate risk mitigation on execution front, we are good to go on a data center project. And last, one part of your question was regarding the grid integration and the renewable integration and energy efficiency.
As well.
These are inbuilt into the credit decision because they affect the operating cost, the ESG rating matrix, and the overall competitiveness of the project. So I would say these are already inbuilt into the credit decision.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So next question is for Microsoft. So, sir, in your experience regarding standards and interoperability and so on, now that AI is becoming increasingly embedded in energy-intensive digital infrastructure, what role do you see for that the government and the regulators should play in setting the right standards for transparency, interoperability, and accountability, so that these data centers support the national energy and climate goals?
Sure. So firstly, thank you so much for having me here. It's very rarely that Google and Microsoft sit together, but certainly, but certainly for a cause like this, we do. I think a lot has been talked about AI. AI is very foundational to economic growth. I'm sure everyone in the room agrees to it. So much so that 4 days the country is spending on what AI can do, right? And in my role, when I visit a lot of government customers and healthcare customers, the only conversation we were having on AI, that only tells that the demand is going to increase. I think it's all about how do we view that more as a resource than as a source of demand generation. I think that's how I would put the entire conversation for today on. But I think just answering to that question, probably, of course, we have our own ways in terms of both Google and Microsoft. We have our own climate officers. We have our own policies in terms of managing how our data center operates, in terms of, making sure the water consumption is less, making sure there is a clean energy, carbon-free electricity, and all of that. But I think what we expect from the government is probably have a clear set of frameworks and policies, making sure where they're able to balance both the growth part as well as the climate part, right? And I think three areas where we clearly see. One is about having some standardized transparency in terms of reporting on the energy use, on the water consumption level. Probably that would ensure that there is a little less bureaucracy and less strain on the regulatory hurdles, and there is much transparency in the system, right? The second part is about the interoperability with the grid. I think very, very, very essential in fact, we are working with REC in terms of developing a smart grid as well as Microsoft. And I think what we intend to do is maybe how AI can help in the renewable transition, right? That's something that we're working on. I think the third part, which is most important, is how do we align with the climate goals, right? Or with the climate ambition. What we see is, can there be an incentive on carbon-free electricity, right, given by the government? Can then be incentive on clean energy? I think that's something that probably we would request maybe the governments to come out with a policy which is as clear and as transparent. And I think I strongly believe, as Microsoft, I think we have a very AI will be an accelerator for energy transition. Certainly when we move to renewable. And I think we definitely have a role to play in terms of making it cleaner and making it more sustainable.
Thank you so much. So next question is for PVVNL. How has the growth of data centers in India affected how distribution companies plan for energy purchases and supply, and how the electricity is dispatched? And also, I mean, maybe to this day, but also as you see the growth of data centers demand. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. In Uttar Pradesh, PVVNL looks after the western part of UP. Uttar Pradesh state as a whole right now is surplus in energy. That our availability is around 13% more than what our peak demand happens. And the similar situation, because all our power purchasing is done at the state level. The main issue is of the grid infrastructure to carry that power to the consumer where it's needed. So right now the growth area in Uttar Pradesh is concentrated around Noida. So we have taken tentative steps, of course, in partnership with REC, who are financing this. We are modernizing the Noida power distribution system. We are going for N-1 redundancy system there. Around 19 new substations are being created. We are going for ring main systems at the level of our substations and 11 kV feeders. So we are planning it should be completed in the next 2 years, and around our infrastructure would be so that the actual load is around 67% of what the infrastructure is able to carry. So we have the wherewithal to manage any outage, and it will be operated through SCADA. The other part is that how the electricity is dispatched, though currently we follow a very primitive system. We do a day after planning, and then in case the load at some place exceeds that, we go for load shedding. But in this India Energy Stack process, we are starting a P2P system. It's a very small system right now, but the prosumers and consumers at a very minute level, they are also now starting to trade energy, and that is enabled by AI. People can plan a week ahead and with guardrails that how much the demand should not exceed and how much the price should not exceed. And within that, the AI is planning both the purchase and as well as the sale. And it's doing it in the real time. And right now we have restricted it to day after, but the potential is there to go into the real time. So I see a potential that within 3-4 years, that system would be robust enough to take care of large say solar farms and large data centers. They can plan it together, but finally the DISCOM is always will always need to be there to provide a safety net when this green energy system comes up inadequate at a point. So we are planning for that. In our UP data center policy. It's a state policy. The first 8 data centers which would be built under that, they have a mandate for total double grid system. One of it will be financed by the organization which is building the data center, but the second would be totally financed by the Uttar Pradesh government. So that is in the data center policy that we are planning for a dual grid system, and by then we'll be able to see how it pans out, what is the actual growth, and then we can plan accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So the last question is for REC. So now, I mean, we heard earlier from SBI regarding, how they evaluate data center lending operations. So how about the green energy solutions for data centers? What are the features of a robust, bankable project? And then if you can maybe get a little bit into the, how you see the risks for such projects in terms of reliability, offtake, and so on, and how developers can mitigate those. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and good morning to all. As far as the lender is concerned, now presently there is no mandate for the data centers. Now we are only at 1.7 gigawatts. There is no specific mandate from the government that it should be fully energized with only green energy and all that. So they take supply from the DISCOMs also, which is a mixture of green and non-green. But time is not far away, because government regulations may also change, because it's going to be, our aim is to build a sustainable data center. Sustainable has to cover the supply from green, and the corporates themselves who are building the data centers, who are going to be upscalers, hyperscalers, and they have their self-proclaimed objective also, that it should be a sustainable data center. So definitely the procurement is going to be 100% from green. So looking at that aspect, now REC has been funding a lot of green energy projects, but they have all so far been the off-takers or DISCOMs. Now this is going to be unique. Now we are going to get green projects which are going to come packed with a data center supply. So in that case, we can't assess only the green energy, we need to look at the off-taker also, who is going to be the data center. So the fundamentals of revenue visibility, which as we mentioned, that's not going to change for any lender. That is the bottom line, the revenue visibility. So more than, because renewable technology is very, very stable, it is developed, it's evolved, and we do not have any constraints in funding any renewable project. We have understood the technology. The thing is that when we look at the revenue certainty, then again we have to assess the data center also. It has to go hand in hand. And secondly, how is the data center going to procure? Is it going to procure entirely from this plant which is going to come up? Or is it going to be a group of data centers which are going to come up with a plant which is going to fund them all together? And how strong those entities are is going to matter when I'm going to fund the renewable energy project for that data center. Because ultimately they are going to be paying for that. In case the payment terms define that even if the reliability falls slightly below whatever is a 99.99 safe, and even then they have an alternate N-1 criteria for taking an alternate power source, then I'm safe. So in this case, as a lender, when I look at this thing, I would like to have a project which has a very firm PPA and a very firm revenue payment from the data centers, so that my project is safe and I get the revenues. Number two is the distance. Like when a data center is going to source its power from a plant which is located somewhere far off. Now the green open access regulations are in place, so data centers can go for 100% procurement through these regulations in India. But again, the problem of grid infrastructure, basically transmission infrastructure is going to be my cropper. I have to accept this fact, because data centers and the green renewable generations, they can come up within 2 years. But my transmission infrastructure should not be delayed. So when a project comes to me, I would be looking at a project which would be ready with the transmission requirements, bare requirements, transmission open access approvals, and what is there, it should not be a very far away from the data center consumption. I would ideally like it to be co-located, which is very, very ideal, which may not be possible, but with having a very lesser transmission line setup. So that would be a very safe project for me. And state regulations are very, very, policy certainty is very, very important, because each of the states have their own policy changes. Suddenly open access rules changes, suddenly bankable provisions changes, banking of energy and their payment changes. TOD changes, because your data centers are coming up to peak in the evenings when the normal peak occurs. So they should be having a reliable power. So all these policy certainties, the transmission certainties for the renewable energy project is what I would be looking at, and I would also be assessing. So finally, as a lender, I'd be very happy to have a group captive sort of setup. When a data center person and a renewable generation person, they come together, because data centers, apart from the bigger hyperscalers, they are going to be even the smaller ones. So they can get together and have a group captive, and that would be a very, very safe bet as far as the lender is concerned, and which would be very easy for us to
Thank you.
structure our finance products. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Very comprehensive response. So, since we are running out of time, we can take, yes, maybe 2 questions from the room. So if you can introduce yourself, ask very short question, and maybe who you're addressing it to.
As we are talking about AI, energy and finance, so can we think of building AI models that are common for power sector? Because if we do that in separate data centers, obviously that will take energy and that. And because we have a huge data set in India, our models will be world class. So these models can even be used other warehouses. Our data remains here, safe and secure. As ma'am said, we have data centers already. So can we use this to build these AI models? So that's
Thank you.
my take on it.
Thank you. Okay, let's take one more question, and then we'll.
And the question is about the empowerment of rural areas within UP and India. If rural areas can also be developed as a hub for data centers, that can improve employment for those areas.
Thank you. So, who would like to address the first question about the? Yeah, we have very little time. Anyone would? Yeah. Oh, please. Go ahead.
No, I think firstly, thank you for both the questions, and probably anyone on the panel can answer the both. But I think in terms of models, sir, one that, as I mentioned, we work very closely as Microsoft and even with the other hyperscalers with the government to make sure the models developed here are very much local, right? And gone are the days where we could just do a horizontal pitch saying that buy our cloud or buy our AI model and we are done with it, right? In fact, so much so that we have our own foundry where we have 11,000 models in terms of depending on the industry, depending on the use case, you could just pick it up, right? Definitely, we are in touch with various power. I manage power customers also as part of my portfolio. In terms of coming up with our own models, which is very specific to power sector, right? And both Google as well as Microsoft and in fact all the large hyperscalers, as part of our policy, we are very much local here, right? Which means, to your point in terms of data residing in India, it is very much residing in India. I mean, without that core promise, I don't think we'll be able to operate, right? So very much it's about making it for local here, right? And definitely we work very closely with, but yeah, certainly that's in plan, right? As I mentioned about working with RAC to develop a smart grid, yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen.
Maybe a
sorry,
10-second response, 15 seconds.
The areas where data centers would come are largely shaped by the market forces, but the government is having policies which can nudge them. If you go through the Uttar Pradesh data center policy, there are huge incentives for going to Purvanchal region and Dakshinanchal region. And again, there is the provision for half of the grid being constructed by government subsidy. So government is planning, in case it's a totally greenfield area, the half of the grid subsidy will be given by the government. So government is nudging there, but finally the market forces will prevail. So let's see, we are as looking forward to it as you are. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you so much. So this was the Powerhouse panel and a great discussion on the AI Energy Finance Trifecta. And I would request the meaty officials now to please present our esteemed panel with a memento. Can we have an applause, please, ladies and gentlemen? I hope you've had great